Okay, so we're joined today by Nina Gantz, director of the wonderful film Wonder to Wonder. And we're going to talk about that film in a minute. But before we get started, welcome to Director's Notes, Nina.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So, before we get into talking about the short, I just wanted to introduce our audience to your kind of filmmaking career so far. So, I became aware of your work back in, I think it was 2015, when I saw your National Film and Television School graduation film, Edmond, which of course went on to win a BAFTA in 2016. So, what have you been working on between Edmond and Wonder?
It was 8 years, I think, in between, and that's exactly how long it took to make Wonder to Wonder. So I really started working on Wonder to Wonder straight after film school. I was in like on a plane with Simon Cartwright, who also studied at the National Film School. And made a wonderful film, Man Oh Man. And we were already talking about this new short, and it was really because, like one Edmond. I had to recuperate from Edmond a little bit for a while because it was quite an intense period. Like, you want to just to, get the most out of the film school and yeah, I think I slept like 4 hours a night for like 5 months at film school. So I wasn't immediately ready to make another short, but the thing was is that Edmund did so well that I got this prize from Canal Plus to they put money in to make to make another short. So I I knew I was gonna do that. I was excited about it, but I also needed a bit of time to like step away from, short filmmaking and also earn some money because I was pretty broke after film school.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
so while I was developing this idea with Simon, I actually got signed to the production company Blink Inc. You might know it in
Yeah.
London. And I got the chance to work on some commercials, which was very nice. And I also learned a lot about the industry as well, just coming out of film school, of course. So I did some commercials for Whiskers and Loewe, and I just learned how to work with a bigger team and with like really experienced, talented people, which was really great because Edmund was so felt like so on my own. So it was good to get that experience. And then I did some title sequences and stuff for friends. I did everything basically that I could say yes to and that I had the time for. So while I was developing this script, basically.
Well, I mean, it's great to have you back in the world of short film. That's for sure. We all loved Edmund and we all love Wonder to Wonder. So it's really great to have you back. So why now? Why did it take, I suppose, so long for Wonder to Wonder to come
Yeah.
about? And why are you telling this particular story?
So it took 8 years because it was quite an ambitious idea, and we needed quite a lot of money to make it. Stop motion is quite costly, and you need just a big studio for a long time, um, and people, of course. So we needed money from four. Well, it ended up four different countries, so it was a co-production, and that is quite amazing puzzle you have to make because all that money that comes from different places, you have to spend it there as well. So in the end, we ended up making the puppets in the Netherlands, shooting it in Belgium, doing the post-production in France, and I did, of course, I live in England, so I did the animatic and the modeling all in England and the voice record in England, of course. So that puzzle took very long, but also to fit the story to the budget. It went from 20 minutes to 15, and now in the end it's to 12. And the last cut I made, it was a very different story because to make it
Okay.
from 20 minutes to 12. So I Simon went off the project at some point because it was 5 years, maybe, and he had to go on to other things, and I was still kind of clinging on, a little bit like the characters are doing, like in the film. And I just needed to make it more of my own. And also, you as a maker, you change. over 8 years of, trying to make it work. And my interest shifted from like a story about the TV presenter keeping the puppets captive. And I got way more interested in the story of the three people and the three, the three characters, and how their relationship was after the creator died and how they survive in this, big world. So yeah, that was quite a big change. So I made the animatic like 3 times, like full animatics, which is also takes time on its own to get it right. So yeah, that's how it ends up, costing a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a real labor of love. And why the title Wonder to Wonder? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it actually was called Beyond the Purple Mountains for a really long time, which I still also love. But I wanted a title to work for the TV show that the characters are in, but also for the overall story. And it needed to work for the storyline at the end, which I won't say too much about, I guess. But it's fitting basically with both. I didn't want 2 different titles, one for the TV show and one for the film. So it needed to work. So I changed it to Wonder to Wonder.
Right. And we already talked before I hit the record button about kind of how much I love the film. And one of the things I really love about it is that I think it finds this perfect balance between kind of humor and sadness. There are situations that are quite bleak, but they're also funny, and you don't know whether to laugh or cry, and you find yourself in this weird place between both. But then there's also real empathy for these characters. You really, I'm looking at them behind you, and I've been thinking about them since the film finished. I can't get them out of my head. Was this balance between humor and sadness, if that's the right word, something that happened naturally for you when you were writing the film, or was it something you had to work to get right?
No, it's quite a natural thing actually, because I feel like I wanted to tell this story, and it could be quite sad. It's about grief and how people cope very differently with that. But I think those kind of stories you can really only tell with some lightness and some humor. By making them small, you already do that. But then also, yeah, I think they don't know what they're going through, and I think like they kind of don't know themselves so well. And I think that's where sometimes the humor comes in, and the humor in the sadness. And it's one of my favorite kind of uh, humor, really. And it's quite interesting because while I was filming it, I thought I was making quite a funny film, like quite a lot more funny than in the end when I look at it
Yeah.
it's become. And I think it's because you care about them so much in the end that it's actually a bit darker than I thought. When you just film them separately, you're like, this is fun, but then you put it together and you're like, oh yeah, no, you really do care for them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is one of the good things that's really great about the film. And I see a lot of films trying to deal with grief and loss, and you're always hoping to see something new and different. And yeah, Wonder to Wonder definitely provides that. It's definitely like nothing I've seen before. It's quite a surreal film in terms of, if you try and describe it. But like you say, one of the things that really struck with me was how grounded it feel it felt, and how authentic. You really buy into these characters, and you really feel for them and their situation. So looking back at your production, how much attention and how much focus did you put into kind of trying to make the film feel grounded and the characters, I guess?
Yeah, it was quite important to me actually, making it feel authentic. And because you're creating this fantastical world where these people, you just have to accept that these miniature people are living in a real world. I think it's quite important to get that right. Otherwise, you start looking at inconsistencies, and you start thinking about, but how did they come to this world? And like you start thinking loads of things. So I think as and you want to with a short film, you want people to focus on the right line of the story. And of course, I didn't want them to just think, that some things weren't right, or like, why are they small, or like, maybe I can get into that in a feature length film, but not for this. So I think it's important to get the detail right, and to, for instance, there's at some point in the film, they open a gherkin jar by swinging it on a kind of in a system against the wall. And in animation, of course, you can open a gherkin jar in any way. You can just let it explode or whatever. But I wanted that system to really work. So we actually recorded it for real. We made the system, and then we slow motion recorded it to also see how it would, how it moves, and how the gherkins come out and stuff. And I think those kind of details, I think, are quite important. People call me, well, actually, my Dutch friends call me mierenneuker, which is like a nitpicker, I guess, but it translates to antfucker. So I'm like the antfucker, and I'm quite proud of it. And I think it's important to antfuck a bit here and there, not too much, but as long as it's
Wow.
important for the story, and you don't want it just to distract, basically.
Antfucker definitely sounds cooler than nitpicker.
I know, right? It makes
I'm
total sense.
I'm quite jealous of your nickname now.
Oh, you can use it. I mean, if you feel like you are also an ant fucker.
I'm definitely going to use it from now on, that's for sure. Okay, so
Good.
let's talk about the visual side of the film. Like stop motion is one of my favorite types of animation. I absolutely adore it when it's done well. And I know kind of stop motion is your kind of chosen path in animation as well. But what do you think makes stop motion and the story of Wonder to Wonder such a perfect combination?
Um, yeah, it was one of the things that really inspired me to make it. Like the story inspires me to use a certain technique. It's not really the other way around usually. But I knew that this story would really work. Like I for stop motion in combination with live action. Of course, I could have just filmed like real people on a green screen, and that would have worked. But I think it's the extra level of storytelling almost when you are using like stop motion. And I wanted um, to use that kind of, well, it's kind of almost a story in a story because we're making a film about a TV show, a kids TV show with miniature puppets, and in those miniature puppets are actually little humans, but those humans are stop motion, and it just
Yeah,
makes this whole world like quite strange. I think it really brings something to the story, but also I think the sensibility of it works really well. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
no, that makes sense.
But yeah, but I wanted them to look quite like I love the work of Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah,
So and I think that technique, although you look at it now, it's you can totally see the techniques, but you can still believe the story, and it brings this nostalgic kind of feeling to it, which I think was perfect for this film.
yeah.
So yeah, I tried to not hide the technique too much, but it ended up much more realistic than I actually thought it would be.
Good. It's interesting you mentioned nostalgia because we'll come to that in a minute. That's one of the questions I really wanted to ask you about. But before we move on from the characters, since we're talking about those as well, like I absolutely adore the character design. Like you say, the fact that you've got these real little people inside these suits that they play for their on-screen personalities. Did the characters always look this way? Is this always how you envisioned them, or was there kind of an evolution to getting them how they are now?
Yeah, it was a very big evolution for me because I basically and stop motion character is usually a lot bigger than, you know, the character that you see here. So normally it's like this much bigger, but because I wanted to put them in a real setting and use real props, I needed to make them a certain size because otherwise they just looked like they were small babies walking around, if you see what I mean. It just didn't give the same kind of cuteness to it. So it meant that I had to make them much smaller than usual. And you can see here, the face is only this small. But I knew I needed a lot of expression from them because that's where I felt, you know, the story, like it was useful for the story. I needed to give them expression. And it meant that I had to use it like a 3D printing technique, which I had never used before, and I was a bit scared of because I'm a stop motion traditional animator. I'm scared for computers. And so I knew it wasn't something I could do myself, and that's when it starts being difficult because then, you know, you have to get other people involved and you don't know what it's going to look like. It's also very exciting, of course, because you get to learn a lot from all those people. But for a short film, it's like it's always good to keep it close to yourself. And yeah, so I had to go through that process. So I sculpted the puppets first, like in clay, like quite big, and then we 3D scanned it to put that into the computer and then shrunk it, and that was then Blink helped me with some people to make 3D models of those puppets, and then we made the facial animation. And now you see, you know, this is like this is
Oh
how they
wow.
look without. It's really scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've got a whole like, you know, a whole library of faces. Not very many because I want to keep really the snappiness
Yeah,
of
yeah.
stop motion. Um, but yeah, so that's and that process of working with other people and, you know, like it always turns out to something different than you thought. Like I thought they might be way more sculpted and you could almost see a bit like fingerprints in them
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but they just became more human. And I think in the end that's good because they really do need to connect to the live action character in the film. They need to feel like they're of the same world. They're like they're one, you know, they're part of the same world, and you don't want to question that because if they were not too human, then you might have thought that was all in his head,
Yeah.
for instance,
Yeah, yeah.
like the puppets had come alive, and now they're real little humans. So yeah, it's a whole journey, and it took like it took 4 months or something to get it
Well,
right.
they definitely, yeah, they definitely feel like little humans all the way down to their little genitalia. It's all there. It's all present and correct.
Yes, exactly. That needed to be right.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I mean, it sounds like, the process was a new one, but it turned out really well. And obviously, the technology was actually a great assistance there.
I know, I know. I should not be scared. I should
No,
embrace it.
but it's natural sometimes to stick to the ways you know. So it's great that you embraced these things. And I think this was your first time working with actors in a stop motion film as
Yeah.
well. And I mean, that's obviously something that was new to you as well. So how did you get the best performances from your cast, and how did you work with them to really bring the characters to life?
Well, that's yeah. I worked with sometimes with actors before just to get like the reference footage for the animators. But this was really the first time I worked with dialogue, and I found that quite tricky. I really don't like dialogue that explains the story too much. I really wanted to get it right, and I got some really amazing people involved, and it was so nice to see what they brought to it. I never expected like what an extra level they they could bring to the film. For instance, Mary was done by Amanda Lawrence, who's an amazing actress. She's mostly a theater actress, I think. Now she's doing more TV, but she also has an amazing expression. But when she does her monologue, for instance, she did it with so much more feeling than I ever thought. Like I said, I always kind of thought more humor, but she kind of got way more feeling in it, and that really, I think that monologue is just, I can't imagine it now without that. And so that was really incredible. And then I was very happy to get Toby Jones involved as well, who, to my surprise, said yes to it. He was the first person we asked, and I actually already sculpted one of the puppets to look quite a lot like him, this one. I mean, here he has a big beard, so you won't see much. But I basically used Toby Jones's like IMDb and stuff to oh, they're all falling sculpt the puppet, and even before he said yes, and then finally he liked the idea and the script, and I mean, yeah, he nailed it, of course. I mean, he comes from a theater family. I was keen to use theater actors because it felt like a bit of a stage show, what they were doing. So yeah, it was quite amazing. Also, the knowledge of Shakespeare, of course, that he can show off in that role, and also making him do that as a kind of almost like a bad actor, which is quite fun because basically this character thinks that he's a great Shakespearean actor, and to have Toby Jones do that was really fun. And then there's Neil Salvage. I need to just also mention him because he's the only live action character in the film. And I found him like a week before we're supposed to be shooting him, and I was in the van with my set designer, and I was like, I don't have an Uncle Gilly yet, and then she all of a sudden said, oh, like an old friend of mine that I went to school with has a dad. I mean, that he could be perfect for this. And yeah, he said yes, and he came to Belgium, and he was
there you go.
so great. And he really brought this gentle and sweetness to it, which I think we needed. So you don't question too much his what he just needs to be a nice person, I think, for this version of the film. Of course, in previous version he wasn't.
He has a great fatherly quality, I think.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what it was like in the other versions of the film.
Exactly. Very different. He put one in the microwave.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know.
That is quite a different film.
I know, yeah.
So we kind of mentioned this earlier, but thinking about nostalgia, there's a kind of retro feel to the aesthetic of the film, from the opening scenes when it feels like it's shot on the old 4x3 VHS camera, to the world they live in. Did you always intend the short to have this nostalgic quality to it?
Yes, I think it is kind of my where I naturally go to anyway. I hate iPhones in films. I mean, and fancy laptops. So it's quite hard for me to even think of a film that would have that in, for instance. So that's something, but also it really worked for the story because I wanted you to feel when looking at the sets, there was a big history there, that they've been doing this forever and ever. And that was really important to me to immediately feel that history, and also that the TV show might have gone on for very long already. So that's, I think, really helped the story.
Yeah, and despite tackling themes of kind of loss and isolation, I feel like at the end of the film, there's actually a sense of hope. So it doesn't end too bleakly. What do you hope your viewers take away from watching your film?
Yeah, I hope they do. I hope they feel something at the end of it. They felt for the characters, and that's my most important thing. And it's hard to say what I want them to feel because I appreciate, like, everyone is taking, from what I'm gathering after like film viewings, everyone takes something else away from it, and I really like that. But overall, they do have a sense of, it does have a sense of hope, and I think that's really important because it's it's you know, it's something that after such a big event happens to you, it's important to move on at the end and look into the future. I mean, this sounds quite heavy, of course, but I do think it was important for the characters to have that kind of uh, uh, look to the future at the end. And like, I just want them to have felt something, and
Yeah,
if
yeah,
they even experience something in their lives like this, I think it will resonate with them. It will resonate for people that have lost someone, but also maybe um, even going through, for instance, that time that we were all, during lockdown, that we were all just trying to get by and doing clinging on to the things that we know what to do, and this kind of isolation and being kind of trapped. I feel that's something also that's worked itself into the film. So yeah.
definitely. I think, and I think a good, like you said, a good short film, a good story of any kind should resonate in many different ways with many different people. So it's kind of a bit of a, I always think it's a bit of a strange question to ask, but for some reason I put it in there because yeah, what do you hope viewers take from your film? Well, it depends on the viewer, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just they should feel something. I would hate if people just are kind of, they think
Just
it's bland,
cold. Yeah,
just
yeah,
cold. I mean, that would be I'd rather people really being like not very happy with it, like
yeah,
hating it, or people loving it. And I think that's rather some people loving it, obviously. But yeah.
yeah. Great. So final question. You talked about the future then, and obviously, your film's having a great festival run, picking up lots of awards. In my opinion, it's pretty much the perfect short film. So how do you follow that up? What's next?
So yeah, I am already working on two feature films actually. One would be a family film, and one is one for adults. The one for adults is a mix between live action and stop motion, and the family film is fully stop motion. So that's quite exciting. So I'm developing those, which is a nice place to be, really.
Good luck with both of those projects.
Thank you.
We'll be following your career closely as we always do, and excited to see more work from you. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk about Wonder to Wonder. I can't wait for it to come online. I can't wait for more people to see it.
Yeah, me too. That will be very nice. Thank you so much for the really nice questions.